It is wonderful to be with you all. It's so wonderful to be associated in any way with the Regina Academies. We're so grateful to Barbara Henkels and to Paul for having started this wonderful initiative, and to the great people that have started it, Tim and Brian. It's a great pleasure, and there's Juan over there who wrote me into this. Caught me early one morning before I had my wits about me to say no, but no, anything I can do for the Academies is a great thrill and a great joy. They're also aptly named. Regina Angelorum, we had angels singing for us this morning. Regina Caeli. Every time I go into one of their schools, it's like a little piece of heaven. So it's just a wonderful, wonderful initiative that's been undertaken, and I'm just so thrilled to be any part of it at all. And I'm always so proud when our children are reciting the Hail Mary or the Our Father in Latin. I have a great love for Latin. As a matter of fact, there's something here called the International Institute for Culture in Ivy Hall, which is over in Lancaster Avenue near Our Lady of Lourdes Church. And we have an intensive Latin program. If you want to learn Latin, come to us. You can, for 2 months, we teach Latin 6 hours a day, 5 days a week for 2 months, okay? And when you're finished, you have the equivalent of 2 years college level Latin. But I bring that up because of your great commitment in the school to Latin. In 2014, I was very blessed to have a private audience with His Holiness Pope Benedict XVI. And he knew of our Latin program at Ivy Hall. And one of the first things he asked me was how the Latin program was going. And I assured him that it was going very well. And he was most pleased with that. And he said, without Latin, we don't know where we've come from or where we're going. And that might be a bit overstated in some of your minds, but nonetheless, it points to his deep commitment that we have to know our roots if we're going to work toward the future. And, the theme of this breakfast is faith in the future, and one of the ways in which the school prepares us for the future is through the teaching of this ancient and ever-living language, which goes far beyond helping us learn the English language. It roots us in the great classical traditions of the West, for which we must be profoundly grateful as Catholics. But what a blessing the Regina Academies are in the midst of so much intellectual and moral ruin in our day, where not only ancient languages have been forgotten, but ancient truths as well. Now, I only have 10 minutes. I was told to keep it to that. That's a challenge because, as my Pennsylvania Dutch mother-in-law would always say, teachers and preachers are like old shoes. The one thing that never wears out's the tongue. So, but nonetheless, we'll keep it to 10 minutes. I must say, in all honesty, and I know a lot of very wonderful, good people are involved in public education, but I can't imagine how even lukewarm Catholics could send their children to public schools today, and to some Catholic schools as well. Not only do the children not receive instruction in the faith, but they are shaped and formed by the false religion of secularism, which is inimical to Catholic teaching and practice, and truly poses a threat to their eternal happiness. Our most fundamental beliefs are mocked, and our most deeply held moral convictions are presented to children as inhumane and intolerant. In fact, today, even the most basic realities of human existence are called into question by secular education. There are no longer binding moral norms which are universally observed. The most basic moral norm, that we may never commit murder, was cast aside in 1973 when the Supreme Court legalized the taking of innocent life in the womb. Abortion constitutes a direct assault on innocent human life, and is a direct assault on God in whose image the child has been created. However, in our public schools, abortion is presented as a right which must be protected and which must be extended around the world. Same-sex marriage is now legal in this country. The marriage between 2 men and 2 women is an impossibility, as we know, yet it has been granted legal status. This, too, is an assault on the image of God. Scripture tells us, God said, "Let us create man in our own image." So God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he him, male and female. He created them. Same-sex marriage is another direct assault on the image of God and yet is being taught in our public schools as something praiseworthy that must be accepted. And today we grapple with another assault against God the Creator, in many of our schools because of the spread of so-called gender theory. There are those in the highest reaches of government and throughout our educational systems who deny that we are what God has created us to be, a man or a woman. Our gender, we are told, is whatever we in our minds choose it to be. During my 2014 meeting with Pope Benedict, one of the first things he expressed to me was his concern about the dangers of gender theory. And I thought to myself, well, this poor old man, he's certainly out of touch, in this little house up in the gardens of the Vatican. But lo and behold, he was far more in touch with what was going on than I was. Within 2 years, the so-called bathroom wars had broken out here in the United States. The Department of Education issued a letter saying that schools must accommodate children and treat them as whichever gender they want to be, including allowing them to use bathroom and other facilities provided for the opposite sex. When Pope Francis addressed the bishops of Poland in July of 2016, he spoke of the ideology of gender. I quote, "Today, children are taught in school that everyone can choose his or her own sex, and this is terrible." He went on, in a conversation with Pope Benedict, he said to me, "Holiness, this is the age of sin against the Creator," end quote. So Pope Emeritus Benedict said to Pope Francis exactly what he had said to me on that private meeting. And children in our public schools are subjected to these and so many other distortions of reality. One aberration after another is accepted and taught as the norm. Human beings brought into existence in glass dishes, the engendering of 3-parent embryos, the mixing of human and animal genetic material, the freezing of humans in liquid nitrogen at the earliest stages of their development. We live in a society in open rebellion against creation and its creator. The story is told of this bioscientist that thought that he could have done such a better job with creation than God did. So when he showed up at the pearly gates, he demanded that he be shown right into the throne room. And St. Peter says, "Are you sure you want this?" And the scientist says, "Yes, I am." So St. Peter takes him into the celestial throne room, and God looks down and says, "So you thought you could do a better job than I?" And the scientist said, "Yeah, I do think I could." And so God said, "All right, well, let's just see." So God came down off his throne. He knelt. He pulled together the dust with his hands. He molded and shaped the dirt. And he held up a beautiful figure of man. He breathed his life into it. And this magnificent human being leapt from God's hands. And God said, "You can do better than this?" And the scientist, "Sure I can." God said, "Okay, go ahead." So the scientist goes up. He gets down on his knees. He starts pulling together the dirt and the dust. And God says, "Hey, you make your own dirt." The point is, only God creates. Only God can create. We merely use what God has given us, what he has created, and if we do not, we will pay a terrible, terrible price. There was a wonderful event a couple of weeks ago celebrating the 10th anniversary of the founding of Regina Angelorum, and great praise justifiably heaped upon Barbara for all that she has done. That evening, there was one word which seemed to be preeminent, from Father Thier's invocation to the final address by John Coffey of the first graduating class of Regina Angelorum. That word was truth. Despite the aggressive relativism of our day, we know there is truth. But not only is truth denied today, even reality is denied. As St. Thomas Aquinas teaches us, truth is the conformity of mind to reality. We live in a day in which even our educational institutions deny truth and reality and leave our children confused, vulnerable, and at risk. The fathers of the Second Vatican Council predicted this. When the Creator is forgotten, they tell us, the creature itself grows unintelligible. And the principal creature who has grown unintelligible in our day is man himself. We no longer know who he is or why he is. That clearly is not the case at the Regina Academies. Truth is affirmed and taught there, and not just the measurable truths of the hard sciences such as physics and chemistry, but even more importantly, the moral truths which are transcendent and which are absolutely essential to helping our children and ourselves navigate through life. When John Coffey spoke at that event a couple weeks ago, he reminded us that ultimately truth is a person, Jesus Christ. Christ has revealed to us God, who himself is goodness, truth, and beauty. But equally important, he has even revealed us to ourselves. As the Second Vatican Council said in another place, Christ fully reveals man to himself and makes his supreme calling known. With the education provided by Regina Angelorum, the children know who the human person is, and they know his final destiny. The children learn that man's supreme calling is to know, love, and serve God in this life, and to live with him forever in the next. The theme of this gathering is faith in the future, but we are not talking about some nebulous, uncertain, unknown future. Our future is itself the person of Jesus Christ. We can have faith in the future because we have already come to know him. Our faith is Jesus just as our past is Jesus. And Jesus was born of a woman, and he was born a man, as a male, not some undefined person who might someday choose his gender. He was born a man to be a warrior, to do battle against all the forces of darkness and evil. And when he conquered those forces by laying down his own life, he was raised up never to die again. The man born of a woman in a particular place more than 2,000 years ago still lives. He carries that past into our present, and he holds it out to us as our certain future. This is what our children receive from Regina Angelorum: a grasp of reality, a commitment to the truth, and a veneration of him who is the Jesus of history and of the future. How could anyone possibly overestimate the inestimable value of an education provided by Regina Angelorum and the other Regina Academies? There our children come to know and to revere the Jesus of the small town of Nazareth and the Jesus who is also the Lord of the universe. They are taught to have faith in the future, to have faith in Jesus, the resurrected Lord of history. So pull out your checkbooks, loan us your credit cards before you leave, and let's see that the poor board doesn't have to worry about where the money is going to come for the next paycheck for the teachers. This is something you really have to commit yourself to in any way possible, because it's a light, it's an oasis. When I drop off my grandchildren, 3 of them go to the Angelorum school. Well, one's actually with the Chesterton Academy now. And I walk out of that school, I just feel buoyed up, I feel happy, I feel positive because of the wonderful spirit that one encounters there and the great love that one finds for Jesus that we share with everybody in the school. So thank you. I think I went 2 minutes over my 10, but it's been great being with you, and God bless Regina Angelorum.